Okay, y'all, today is February 4th, and I'm doing a little mini lesson on lesson 5-5 that we talked about today, solving one-step inequalities with multiplication and division. Now, there is a golden rule when you solve inequalities with multiplication and division, and that golden rule I've written up here. If you multiply or divide by a negative number, a number smaller than 0, you must flip the inequality sign. So for example, if it starts as greater than and you multiply by a negative number, you're gonna have to flip it to less than. That will make a lot more sense as we get into some examples. So let's go ahead and get started. So number 1, 15x is greater than or equal to negative 60. Well, to solve this, first I'm gonna draw a line through my inequality symbol. And that just shows me that I have two sides. Whatever I do on one side, I must do on the other. Now, I'm trying to get that x by itself, and it's connected to 15 through multiplication. So I'm going to divide by 15 on both sides. So on the side with the x, my 15s cancel out, and x is by itself. Now, notice, I divided by 15. That's not a negative number, so my sign does not change. It stays as greater than or equal to. Now on the other side, negative 60 divided by 15, you can put that in your calculator or you can do it in your head. You're gonna get negative 4. So x is greater than or equal to negative 4. Now we need to graph that. So we've got our number line here, and I know I want negative 4 to be kind of close to the center. So I'm gonna start at negative 7, negative 6, negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, and 0, and 1, okay? So negative 4 is kind of not quite in the center, but close enough. And I know that I've got to put a circle at negative 4. Now, what kind of circle do I need? Well, because I have a line underneath my symbol, I need to fill in that circle. It's a closed circle. Now, which direction do I shade? It says x is greater than or equal to negative 4, so I shade all the numbers that are bigger than negative 4. And I even get my arrow. Okay, moving on to number 2. P divided by 5 is less than 4. Well, first I'm going to draw my line through my inequality sign, and P is being divided by 5. So to undo divided by 5, I need to multiply by 5, and I'm going to do that on both sides. Now on the side with the P, my 5's cancel out, and P is by itself. Now notice, I multiplied by 5, not multiply by negative 5, it's a positive 5. So my sign does not change. So P is less than 4 times 5 is 20. P is less than 20 is our solution, and now we need to graph that. So I want 20 to be kind of close to the center of my number line. So I might start at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. So at 20, I need my circle. What kind of circle do I need? Well, it needs to be an open circle. And then P is less than that. So I need to shade all the numbers that are smaller than 20. So I'm shading towards 16, and I'm going to include my arrow. Moving on to number 3. So we've got negative 4n is greater than 36. To get that n by itself, I need to divide by negative 4. And I'm doing that on both sides. Now, on the side with the n, my negative 4's cancel out, and n is by itself. Now, we need to ask ourselves, does our sign need to flip? And notice right here, we divided by negative 4. So yes, my sign does need to flip. Instead of greater than, it is less than. 36 divided by negative 4 is negative 9. So n is less than negative 9. That's our solution. Now we graph it. So negative 9 needs to be kind of close to the center. So I might start at negative 12, negative 11, negative 10, negative 9, negative 8, negative 7, negative 6, negative 5, negative 4. So negative 9 is where I put my circle. What kind of circle do I need? An open circle, because there's no line under my symbol. And I shade all the numbers that are smaller than that. So I shade towards negative 12, and I include my arrow. Okay, moving on to number 4. We have negative 4m is less than 28. So I'm first going to draw my line through my inequality symbol, And I'm trying to get that m by itself. And it's connected to -4 through multiplication, so I undo that by dividing by -4. So notice, I divided by -4. That means my inequality sign has to flip, so instead of it being less than, it's now going to be greater than. On the side with the m, my -4 is canceled out. M is now by itself. On the other side, 28 divided by -4 is going to be -7. So m is greater than -7 is our answer. Now we graph it. So I want -7 kind of close to the center. So I might start with -10, -9, -8, -7, -6, -5, -4, -3, and -2. So I need to put my circle at -7, and it needs to be an open circle because there is no line underneath our symbol. It's not a or equal to. So open circle, and I shade all the numbers that are bigger than -7. So shade towards -2 and include that arrow to show it keeps on going. Number 5, we have W divided by -10 is less than or equal to -20. So to get W by itself, I need to multiply, and I'm going to multiply by -10. And I'm going to do that on both sides. Now on the side with the W, my -10s cancel out and W is by itself. Okay, now notice on the other side, we take -20 and we multiply it by -10. I'm multiplying by a negative, so I flip my sign. So instead of it being less than or equal to, it's now going to be greater than or equal to. And -20 times -10 is going to be a positive 200. So W is greater than or equal to 200 is our solution. Now we graph it. So these are kind of big numbers, so I'm kind of going to skip around, but I might do let's go with 198. That right there is 199, so I'm not skipping it, I'm just not labeling it. 200, 201, 202, 203, 204, 205, and 206. Okay, so where do I put my circle? I put it at 200. And what kind of circle does it need to be? Well, because there's a line under our symbol, I need to shade it in. So it's a closed circle, and I shade all the numbers that are bigger than 200. So I shade towards 206, and I include my arrow. Moving on to number 6. R divided by -2 is greater than or equal to 5. Well, draw my line. R is being divided by -2, so I undo that by multiplying by -2, and I do that on both sides. So on the side with the R, my -2's cancel out, and R is by itself. Now notice, we multiplied by -2. We're doing that on both sides. So because I'm multiplying by a negative, my sign has to flip. So R is less than or equal to 5 times -2 is -10. That right there is our solution, and now we need to graph it. So I want -10 kind of in the center of my graph if possible. So let's start maybe with -14. And again, I'm going to label every other line. So that's -13, -12, -11, -10, -9, -8, -7, and -6. Where do I put my circle? At -10. And what kind of circle do I need? Well, because there's a line under my symbol, I need to have a closed circle. So I'm going to fill it in. And I shade all the numbers that are smaller than that. So I shade -14 in that direction, and I include that arrow. Okay, number 7. B divided by 8 is less than 8. I'm going to start by drawing my line through my inequality sign, and B is being divided by 8. So I'm going to multiply by 8, and I'm going to do that on both sides. Now on the side with the B, my 8's cancel out, and B is by itself. Now, notice, we multiplied by 8. That's a positive 8, so my sign does not need to change. So it stays less than. 8 times 8 is 64. So B is less than 64 is our solution. Now we graph it. So I'm going to label probably every other one, but let's start at 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, and 66. Where do I put my circle? At 64. And what kind of circle does it need to be? Well, it needs to be an open circle. There's no line underneath that symbol. And I need to shade all the numbers that are smaller than that. So I'm shading in the direction of 58, and I'm going to include that arrow because my solutions keep on going beyond that, 57, 56, 55, and so on. Number 8, we have negative 54 is less than or equal to negative 6c. So I'm going to start by drawing my line through my inequality symbol, and I'm trying to get that c by itself. It's connected to a negative 6, so I'm going to divide by negative 6 on both sides. Now on the side with the c, my negative 6 cancels out, and c is by itself. But note, we divided by a negative 6, so my inequality sign has to flip. Instead of it being less than or equal to, it's now going to be greater than or equal to. Now on the other side, I have negative 54 divided by negative 6. If you put that in your calculator, you're going to get positive 9. So 9 is greater than or equal to c. Now this answer is perfectly acceptable. I would take that on a test or a quiz. But I would prefer to write it to where c is on the left-hand side and 9 is on the right-hand side. Am I allowed to do that? Can I write it this way? Yes, as long as I'm very careful with my sign. So notice the pointy side is pointing to the C, so I still want the pointy side pointing to the C. So C is less than or equal to 9 is also an acceptable answer. And now we just need to graph that. So we want 9 kind of sort of in the center of our number line. So let's start with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Okay, so at 9, I need my circle. What kind of circle does it need to be? It needs to be a closed circle because we have a line underneath our symbol. So I'm going to fill it in, and then I shade all the numbers that are smaller than that, so towards negative 6, and I include that arrow. So now let's look at some word problem examples. So number 9, each of 4 family members uses 175 minutes or fewer of their combined family cell phone plan. At the end of the month, the family does not have any remaining cell phone minutes. Solve the inequality, and I forgot to give you the inequality, but it is x divided by 4 is less than or equal to 175. So solve that inequality to find how many cell phone minutes the family might share each month. Well, I'm just going to take this inequality right here and I'm going to rewrite it in a way that's a little bit more familiar to us. So usually when we see division, we see it as a fraction. So we see like x over 4 is less than or equal to 175. Now this should be an inequality that you know how to solve. You know that x is being divided by 4, so I undo that by multiplying by 4. And I do that on both sides. Now on the side with the x, my 4's cancel out, and x is by itself. Now keep in mind, we multiplied by 4. That's a positive 4, so there's no need for me to flip my sign. It stays as less than or equal to. Now on the other side, I have to multiply 175 times 4, and when I put that in my calculator, I get 700. 700 what? 700 minutes. So x is less than or equal to 700 minutes. Okay. Now number 10, Rick has $315 in spending money. He wants to buy some video games that cost $24.50 each. Write and solve an inequality to find the number of games that he can buy. Okay, so some important information here. He has this much money. So can he spend $318? No, the maximum amount he can spend is $315. So I'm going to make a little note of that. The maximum that he can spend is $315, okay? Other important information is that each game costs $24.50 each. And I circled that word each because I know that when I see that word each, every, per, that usually indicates that I'm going to take the number that's near that and multiply it with my variable, right? So I know that 24.50 needs to be multiplied with my variable. So we can go ahead and do that. Let's set x as our variable, and let's say that it represents the number of video games. Okay, so we've already established 24.50 gets multiplied with x. And then on the other side of my inequality, I need my total, 315, right? Now, what inequality sign do I want to use? Well, we've established that 315 is the maximum that he can spend. So if it's the maximum that he can spend, the best inequality sign is less than or equal to. Now, hopefully you look at this inequality and think, I know how to solve that, because you should at this point. So let's solve it. So I'm going to draw a line through my inequality symbol, and to get that x by itself, I'm going to divide by 24.50 on both sides. Okay, so on the side with the x, 24.50 cancels out, and x is by itself. Now notice, we divided by a positive number, so I don't need to flip my sign. So x is still less than or equal to something. And I'm going to put this in my calculator, 315 divided by 24.50. And I get a really long decimal, but I get 12.857.142.86, and it keeps on going. Okay, the thing about this is that answer is fine because he cannot buy 12.8 video games. How many video games can he buy? Well, if he buys 19, he's going over his spending limit of $315. And how do I know that? Well, if I multiply 24.50 times 19, I promise you're going to have a number bigger than 315. In fact, I'm just going to figure out what that number is. And why would I multiply it by 19? I would multiply it by 13. But I would get $318. If I multiply 24.50 times 13, I would get $318.50. So he would be spending more than he has money. He can't do that. So the maximum that he can buy is 12 video games. So he can buy up to, or at most, 12 video games. And that is the end of our notes for today. Y'all have a good day.